So we literally just got finished with the screening of Bitter Melon. How was it? How was the audience here in Wichita?
It's great. This was the second of two screenings here in Wichita. The other one, the first one was yesterday, and yeah, the response has been overwhelmingly good. I never know how people are going to react depending on their ethnic background or their or their political background for that matter, yeah. I have to say the questions that came up at both screenings were all really thoughtful. It's really nice to hear from women who actually have lived through domestic abuse, sharing their experiences. I mean, I'm not saying it was a big heart circle in there, but it really makes a difference when you have people talking openly about it, because Bitter Melon is very much a personal story on my part, so it just becomes a little more intimate when people start talking at the Q&As about domestic violence. Not abstractly, so I find it refreshing. It was really cool.
What I love in your film is you give the different, like the mother's perspective of the whole situation. The daughter's perspective is really unique. And then obviously the wife just being stuck in there. And then with the way we get to unfold of how much he's literally become the father over time. Where did you fit yourself into this? Because Declan's coming out of left field. There's Mo's character. There's a lot of different elements of who could go into it. You give us a lot of different takes on family dynamic. It's a big enough family. I feel like you can touch any type, if you will.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, each family member is based on a family member of my own, but each one is an archetype of a certain type of journey, and as much as I did try to design that into the script, it kind of is how it is when you have a family, right? So you have there's the abusive father, who was who's no longer in the picture, but left a violent stain on the family, right? Which makes the mother kind of aggressive as well. At one point, you even see her want to lift her hand at somebody. Then you have the oldest brother who really wants to make a change, He's the one who moved away first, right? And then you have the youngest one, Declan, who is who has the added complexity of being gay in a Catholic household, kind of finding the movie is about how he negotiates his path, So, and one thing I've told people is, depending on where you are in life or what you believe about domestic abuse, you might have a different takeaway about the ending. Some people see this as a very, very disturbing ending. Some people think it's really cathartic. Some people think it's a happy ending. And I don't want to tell anyone that they're wrong, right? Because you take what you have, you take the ending and you make of it what you will.
How much fun was it to touch on the little intricate details of the Filipino life, the food choices, the communication level, the difference of language? I love the phone call with, I guess it's the auntie or the grandmother.
Oh, that's the grandma, yeah.
I love that conversation. It was hilarious where she's like, why are you bothering me?
Yeah, that's my mom, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was brilliant.
See, Mom, you're great.
How much fun is it to touch upon the Filipino lifestyle in the film?
It was a lot of fun, and extra fun because it was funded by a Filipino media conglomerate, right? So it's no one ever questions, why would you put that unknown dish on the table? Anyone's going to know. I'm the Filipinos will know. The interesting thing, though, is I did try to pack a lot of tiny, tiny little cultural things into the movie that just fly by really fast. So I like whenever I see it with Filipinos or people who know Filipinos, you just see these fingers pointing up at the screen every 30 seconds, they have that thing. Oh, they have that Last Supper clock. Oh, they have the barrel guy. But the interesting thing about packing it with these images and sounds, like a lot of the folk music, is I'm coming at it from a super American experience. I am a Filipino American, so a lot of what I'm doing is working off of nostalgia. So whenever these songs play in the movie or certain things pop up in the film, a lot of Filipino Americans I know are always oh, they're delighted. They're oh my God, that's bringing me back to my childhood. But Filipino nationals, the executive producers, right? One of the first questions was, so you're opening the movie with that folk song? That's really kind of corny, huh? And I'm because you hear it all the time. You live in the Philippines. But imagine being me, as an adult, and the last time I heard that folk song was when I was a kid. And And it made me second guess myself for a second. I was like, oh, am I the only one that grew up with that? But when we first premiered the movie and the song started, all the Filipino Americans were like, oh my God, this song, you know? So I love that I can pack them in there and not have it slow the movie down. It's just texture.
I've got to ask, as far as having the daughter character, how much fun is it to kind of have her be a bridge? I love her paintings, for instance, were some of the funniest bits. The Birth of Christ thing cracked up. But there seems like she's obviously the next generation. She's very impactful in the abuse element as well.
Right.
Her viewpoint of it is so different.
Right.
How important is it to have a younger character?
It's really important because the movie, while it is, you know, on the most apparent level, a movie about domestic abuse, I'd like for people to think of it as a movie about the cycle of violence. You know, it's a movie about masculinity. You know, there are lots of things in the movie that feel like random throwaways between friends, but it's really because we're leading up to this examination of men and how men treat women, right? So it's important to see where the next generation is coming from. So I really wanted to show that, okay, now that, you know, people have made their decisions. I can't say I almost spoiled the movie. People have made their decisions. Are they really okay? And you have that one interaction between the mother and the daughter that looks a little off, right? It's like, okay, so what's the future between these two people now? How's she going to grow up? But then you also have the, you know, without spoiling it, there's a baby in the film, you know, and I want people to be thinking about these things because honestly, I feel that way whenever I watch a domestic violence movie. I'm like, I pay attention to the young people. I'm like, what are they seeing? How are they going to grow up after the credits roll? You know, so I think it's very important to have these younger characters in there. We have to pay attention to what the kids see.
The Bitter Melon. Let's talk about the choice and title, and also it plays a part in the film. I think the mother's line, "We need it. It's got to be part of the dinner."
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. So for the record, I wrote this screenplay like 20 years ago, and it was called "He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother." And I really wanted the family to sing the song a cappella, and the ending of the movie was going to be cut to "He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother," but we just couldn't afford it, like to actually get this. We tried, but to get that song would have cost twice the budget of the movie, you know. So I was like, I guess I'll just write a new song. And you know, 20 years later, recognizing that even the title doesn't fit anymore anyway because the movie became a lot more mature. It used to be a lot wackier. And now that it's more of a tragicomedy, the title was up in the air. And I remember talking with a lot of Asian American filmmakers about, like, you know, our favorite Asian American films of the past 20 years. And we were laughing because it sounded like we were like reading off a menu. Because it's just like, oh, what did you like? Oh, I really like dim sum. Oh, yeah, I'm more of a catfish and black bean sauce kind of guy. Well, I like American adobo. And we started laughing, and I said, you know what? If I were to ever make a food title Asian movie, I would probably use Bitter Melon because that is the bane of my. I hate Bitter Melon. I hate Bitter Melon so much, but we were forced to eat it growing up. And, you know, I love the idea that I would complain and say, like, oh my God, this bitter melon is so bitter. And my mom is like, yeah, I know, that's the point. Eat it. It's good for you. Swallow. And so I like the idea of the movie being this food that, like, a lot of people don't really like and being kind of, you know, just bitter, but you have to swallow it. It's a tough vegetable to swallow.
As far as the journey for the film and the festival cycle, what attracted you to Tallgrass? And then you talked a little bit about kind of the reactions. Has there been other festival reactions that kind of have stood out as far as, wow, I didn't think someone would look at it this way?
Yeah, you know, I don't want to say what festivals because, you know, a lot of times when I talk about like an audience's or an audience member's reaction, sometimes it sounds like I'm saying that's representative of the fest, and it's not. So I'll just say that there have been. I'll say the kind of festival it is. There was a queer festival that I went to where I was shocked to have some guy just kind of stand up at the very end of the Q&A and say, like, okay, well, if men are so bad, then we need people like you to tell us how to act. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, wow, that is a really aggressive stance. And it was great because all of a sudden all these women stood up and took pictures of him, and they started dragging him on Twitter. But he was actually pretty diplomatic when I said to him, I said, you know, well, I think it's kind of boring for a director to have to explain everything that he does. Like, it's you know, I'm not that sanctimonious or pretentious. I'm more of one than the other, I know that. But I do feel like it's not my job to tell you how to be a good human being. And he was like, fair enough, and he sat down. But that was really interesting to me, you know. What's funny is some reactions that I've had from people, fine men, is, hey, be careful with your movie. You could really anger some women. You know, those Me Too people are crazy. And it sounds like a warning, but it doesn't sound like they're Me Too supporters, you know?
Yeah.
And so I remember a lot of those people who would be saying that actually witnessed at a lot of these festivals, women, specifically women of color, coming up at the Q&A and saying, like, this movie is really accurate. This is how it happens. This is how the system is built. You know, it's an ugly thing. Because the truth is, I never wanted to make that 2D domestic violence film where you have the good guy and the bad guy gets killed and everyone lives happily ever after. You know, I wanted to show what emotional and moral scarring would look like.
Yeah. What films helped inspire you for the look, the flavor, everything about it? I was always curious because it's got a dark comedy side to it, but it also does have those moments of levity that you see in regular comedy. Yeah.
I still have trouble categorizing the film. Like I'll say black comedy when I know the conversation's going to be really short, you know. But if I know I have some time with somebody, I'll say like it's a tragic comedy, because I think when you say it's a black comedy, people think, okay, so you're making fun of domestic violence. I'm like, no, absolutely not. It's a movie about domestic violence, but it's a black comedy about how a family deals with it, like their choices, you know. So I feel like if I had to call it a domestic violence comedy, you know, that just makes me sound really insensitive. You know, like yeah, you like you had like frying pan noises over whatever hit, and there's a frying pan in the movie, right? I do feel like I had to hit a bunch of different tones in order for it to work, because the obvious answer is to smooth out the movie so that way it has one consistent tone. Because that's safe, it's easy, and it warns people about what's to come, but that's actually not how domestic violence works. It comes out of nowhere and shocks you, right? So the tone shifts are baked in. So if I were to tell you influences, they'd be so disparate, and it probably won't really make much sense, but like, I was thinking every Christmas comedy ever made, and Swimming with Sharks.
Wow.
Yeah.
The Warriors, yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. So I've got to ask, I've got a lot of Filipino friends, and they would hound me if I didn't ask, what is your favorite dish growing up?
It's a toss-up. I'm just going to pick one. Oh, see, I can't. But but I did come up with that first. My favorite Filipino dish is dinuguan.
Wow.
But in Ilocano, we called it dinardaraan, which is the blood stew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
And then as far as the American side of it, I love how this movie, even though it does have those little Filipino touches, this is very much an Americanized film. The music especially, I think, carries over. I love when Mo's in the car with the friends and Morris and all them. How much fun was it to kind of make this film a bit about your journey as well?
Well, yeah, this is where it starts to get really meta, right? Because, you know, the movie is about multiple journeys, you know? Like each family member has their own trek through this ugliness, right? But the lead character obviously has, like, the longest journey in this movie. Like, you're given some backstory, and then you see where he goes with that, and you kind of know where he's going after, right? Without spoiling too much. But for me, the journey from 1997, from when I first wrote it, to now is a journey of its own. And the journey from actually having finished that script, joining the SF Film Society, shooting this, and then releasing it now is another journey. And I really feel like what's interesting is it doesn't change the movie at all, whatever my journey is. Which makes me feel really good. It makes me feel like, okay, I'm glad I waited to make this movie, because I feel like in 1997 I wasn't mature enough to make this movie yet. Wow. You know, I feel like in 97 I was a little wackier, and I was like, I'm going to prove to people that I can laugh at my own pain. And now that I'm in my 40s, I'm like, why? Like, how about I just make like an emotionally involving movie that happens to be funny?
How has this changed your writing, and what are some of the ideas that you've come up with since this film?
Oh, you mean since Bitter Melon?
Yeah.
I think I got this out of my system. You know, I think I will always be analyzing masculinity in movies, no matter what the movie is, even if it's like a little joke here and there. But I do feel like, the final song of the film, of Bitter Melon, is Wind Chime, and I wrote it for the movie, and it's very much sort of like my letter to men, saying, okay, times are changing and time is up. Which way are you going to go? The winds of change are at your back. So you decide, like, are you with us or without, or are you against us? So with that said, that kind of opened the door for me to kind of start thinking about the next films and like, what do I really want to do with my films? Because the truth is, I like the fact that I'm in a place right now where I can actually put my foot down and say, no, I want creative control. I'm writing this. If you don't want the stuff that I write, hire somebody else. So I feel like this is my voice now, and I really, feel like with that song, it made me feel like I want to keep on making media that asks questions like that, right? So, I'm, without going too far, I really can't talk too much about what it exactly is, but I do think that we're in a state right now in which we're expecting certain things of our media that I don't really like or care for that much. I feel like people are politically disenfranchised to the point where they require and need this super happy media that shows like a world in chaos and superheroes coming to save the day, And I feel like what we need more media that tells us to band together and work together against against what you don't believe in, right? Like I don't know why we need to wait around for an Avenger to save us,
That's interesting. It's powerful especially with the midterm elections coming up and this being very drastic time for so many, whoever side you're on. I think both sides are looking at this as drastic times.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'd love to know, as far as the life of Bitter Melon, where does it go from here? How can we keep track of it? How can we keep track of you?
Well, the easiest way to keep track of me is on hpmendoza.com, which is set up to just like reach me through whatever social media platform you desire. But the film itself, for Bitter Melon, will be coming out this holiday season. We haven't announced yet. That's why I'm not giving you a date. But it's the holiday season. We have distribution, we'll see what happens from there. Because if it's releasing during the holiday season, this is gonna play real well for the anti-Christmas folk. This will be nice to see on lists of anti-Christmas movies like Die Hard and The Ref. So yeah, we'll see. I wish I could predict, but fingers are crossed.
2 Kevin Spacey rappers, Swimming with Sharks and The Ref.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's meta on its own level.
Yeah.
HP, just kind of last question. I'd love to know, I've read there's a story to why you HP, and it involves your mom.
Yeah.
Is there any way you'd be able to share that with us? I think it's just kind of cool.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I've ever said this on camera, but my mom has. That's funny.
Since she was such a great actress for you.
Oh yeah, she needs to hear this. Yeah, she keeps wondering if she's like ruining that scene. I'm like, no, you are that scene. So I was born Patrick Henry Mendoza. Patrick Henry. I was named after the libertarian. Give me liberty or give me death. And my mom's really into psychics and numerologists and anyone who kind of sees patterns in the future, right? Namely Jean Dixon. She was a big 976 fanatic. My mom would call all these 976 and 1900 psychics. And she actually went to a psychic at one point and had paper fortunes written for each of her sons, me and my 2 brothers. And being the youngest one, I think I was a baby when she went to go see the psychic. She didn't think much of it. And when I started getting older, she started noticing that the fortunes for my 2 older brothers were coming true. Mind you, a lot of them were really kind of vague notions, he will go to school. And mine was oddly specific, that the letters in my name don't add up to success. So I have to reverse it. Patrick Henry would have to become Henry Patrick, or initialize it. So I would become P.H. Mendoza. So my mom covered her bases by saying, they need to reverse it and initialize it. And I laughed, I scoffed for a while. I'm like, no, there's no way, that can't be true. I mean, it's fun, Mom, but it's late in the game now. But they would call me, I would get called Henry, I would get called Patrick, I would get called multiple versions of my name. So I was used to variants. And the first time I ever published something, it was a 1-act play that I wasn't that proud of because a lot of people touched it. It was one of those things where and I was an arrogant 18-year-old, it's like, I know how to write, don't tell me how to write, and I wasn't proud of the finished product. And I wrote down H.P. Mendoza as a joke, and I showed my mom, and she was like, "Oh, see? The psychic was right." And I was like, "What? That's not success. Believe me, it's not." But then I remember I got called to visit the publisher, and I'll never forget being in New York and being really young and having the guy say, "Are you H.P. Mendoza?" And it was this feeling that I had where I was my first time out of San Francisco, I'm on my own as an adult, and the first person to referred to me as H.P. Mendoza, and I just said, "Yes, I am," and I was like, "That feels right," and it just kind of stuck. And my mom will take all the credit for that.
And I think that's a wonderful way to end it. Thank you so much, HP.
Thank you.